Welcome back, everyone, to the second and final day of the 2022 AMG Leadership Conference. I'm Ayana, one of the co-chairs of the conference, and with me, as always, are my other three partners and co-chairs, Brittany, Sim, and Yadira. Just like yesterday, we've got the chat and the Q&A open. Use the chat to share your thoughts with us. Otherwise, please submit questions using the Q&A. We also have the live transcript enabled. You can turn it on or off by clicking the live transcription button. And another friendly reminder that you'll receive our survey link at the end of today's program. And when you complete it, Brittany, tell them what they could win.
Well, just like yesterday we discussed, you have some really great options. 20, how many did I say? Lucky winners are going to take home a $25 gift card, and one person is going to win the grand prize of a free UCLA Extension course. Thank you so much, UCLA Extension, for getting us that course. Please do remember that your voice matters. So don't forget to take our survey. When you get it, we will share that link at the end. And also make sure to sign up for our AMG mailing list, which is on our website. It's right there on our front page. And by doing so, you're going to receive invitations to upcoming professional development events and so much more. Thank you for being here. Sam.
I also want to make a plug for an upcoming event. Our friends at Bruintech are hosting their Bruintech Connect Spring Conference next week. It's a 3-day conference. The first 2 days are virtual and the last day is hybrid, virtual and in person. And it's going to focus on a lot of different things in the tech world: online privacy protection, applying design thinking to your work, and even getting to know your Bruintech colleagues. So this is all happening next week, Tuesday, May 24th through Thursday, May 26th. It's completely free and it's going to be a great event. And we're going to paste this link in the chat. Please be sure to register and support our friends at Bruintech.
Thanks, Sim. And before we get started with our conference, we want to invite our instructors back from yesterday, Liz, Mandy, and from our Fitwell, UCLA Fitwell. They're going to get us started with a few mindful minutes. So, hey, everybody, let's enjoy.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I'm Mandy from UCLA Recreation. If you want a sit break or stretch breaks for your team at any time, email us at fitwell@recreation.ucla.edu. All right, let's get up and stretch.
Hi, I'm Mandy.
Hi, I'm Liz.
And we're here from Fitwell to lead you in a few rejuvenating stretches. One of the best stretches to do after a long period of sitting is a hip flexor stretch. So we're gonna go ahead and put our right leg forward, our left leg back, and if you're seated, make sure to sit on the edge of your chair. You're gonna peel the back heel off of the ground if you're standing, bend the knees slightly, tip the pelvis slightly forward, and then reach up with the same arm as back leg. So my left leg is back, my left arm is up. I'm going to reach over and draw a little rainbow over my head and take some nice deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth. To hold this stretch and feel the length through my hip flexor and the side of my body. Keep taking those nice full body deep breaths. And one more breath, inhale in. And exhale, release the stretch. Great job. And then we're going to switch sides. Left leg forward, right leg back. And if you're standing, bring that heel off the floor, bend the knees slightly, tilt the pelvis, and then reach up to the sky, over a little bit towards the front leg, and hold that stretch and take those nice deep breaths. Doing great, Bruins. You feel that lovely stretch helping your body to refresh. Take one last deep breath in. And exhale. And release. Great job. Another important stretch to do is chest stretch. So we want to open up through the chest, elbows wide, slight bend in the knees, feet right underneath the hips, and if you're seated, just sit up nice and tall and uplifted in your posture. You're going to open the chest towards the sky. Take a nice deep breath in, and then exhale, close the door by bringing the elbows together. Inhale, open up and lift to the sky. And exhale, close the elbows together. One last time. Inhale, open. Exhale, close. And then we're gonna bring our arms completely out to our sides like we're about to give someone a big hug. And then wrap your arms around yourself and surprise, you're giving yourself a hug. All right, really nice job. Way to stretch it out. Have a great rest of your conference.
Thank you so much, ladies. I'm going to go ahead and share with you all. We have a special message from UC President Michael Drake. Let's check it out.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the 5th annual UCLA AMG Leadership Conference. I wish I could be with you in person today, but I know you're in good hands with the many impactful leaders and resources on today's agenda. Whatever your leadership journey looks like, your role is critical to the success of many. At the University of California, we work every day to provide pathways to opportunities. I would not be where I am today if it weren't for the many leaders who guided and mentored me during my own education and early career. Over the years, I have noticed the same attributes in people who I consider to be good leaders. A good leader is gracious and thoughtful. Good leaders consider their words and their decisions carefully. They hold themselves to the highest standards, and they are consistent in their actions. Leadership starts with knowing your own values. Take the time to identify what matters to you and why. Then, use those values to inform how you lead people forward. Thank you for participating in this conference. I wish all of you a day of meaningful conversations and a deeper understanding of how to lead with conviction and purpose.
And now it is my great pleasure to introduce today's opening keynote speaker, who is a true role model and a dear friend. Yolanda Copeland Morgan, Vice Provost for Enrollment Management at UCLA, is a nationally recognized leader in K-12 and higher education. As Vice Provost, she oversees undergraduate admissions, financial aid and scholarships, strategic partnerships, and community engagement, as well as UCLA's nearly $1 billion financial aid and scholarship budget for the undergraduate college, specialty professional schools as well. She also oversees UCLA's early academic outreach program, as well as Bruin Corps, department I represent. Her career reflects her lifelong dedication to access, equity, diversity, and inclusion. She was the chairman of the College Board, inaugural vice chair of their Advocacy and Policy Center, and is one of only 50 professionals named to the College Board's Scholarship Service Hall of Fame. She serves on the advisory boards of the UNCF, Gates Millennium Scholars, Cambridge International Higher Education, and Reimagining College Access at the Learning Policy Institute. She has testified before the United States Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions on significant impact of the higher education emergency relief funds that UCLA and other UC institutions receive. Ms. Copeland Morgan has been honored for her leadership by the National Association of College Admissions Counseling and the National Western and California Associations of Financial Aid Administrators. She teaches enrollment management leadership at the Center for Enrollment Research at the University of Southern California, and she is frequently appearing on media as a spokesperson. Please join me in welcoming our Vice Provost for UCLA Enrollment Management, Ms. Yolanda Copeland Morgan.
Thank you, Brittany, for that wonderful introduction. Wow, that was a trip down memory lane. And I not only want to thank Brittany, but I also want to thank all of the wonderful conference chairs for inviting me to speak at the AMG Leadership Conference today. I know it's been a lot of hard work. And I want to thank all of you for joining virtually. I heard yesterday was fabulous. During my career, I've worked with many wonderful leaders, certainly at UCLA and previously at Syracuse University, Harvey Mudd College, Occidental College, and as Brittany said, as chairman of the College Board. And I've seen firsthand what makes great leaders. Leaders are not born, leaders are made. They learn what it takes to be a good leader, and they develop the qualities of a leader over time. And when the need arises and circumstances call for it, they're ready to lead. Today, I'm going to use one of my favorite sayings to frame our discussion about leadership. And that saying is this: success is where preparation meets opportunity. I'll also share with you how I did it in my career. When I talk about leadership, I always say that the ship in leadership implies that we're moving forward. In other words, you are going somewhere, right? Remember, the ship in leadership means moving forward at all times. Nobody wants to get on a ship that's not moving forward. And a good leader sets goals and brings people together to achieve those goals as a leader. Many of you are already leaders, and you know it is not easy to move an organization forward. Your team, your colleagues, your managers, and others must want to move forward with you. They need to be able to trust you enough to follow you to a new place. Trust is so important. Colin Powell, former Secretary of State and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said, "Trust is essential to leadership." Powell was a 4-star general in the Army, but he didn't say that giving orders was essential to leadership. I think we get that confused. He said trust is essential to leadership. And in today's world, a leader gains trust by having certain qualities. And I would ask you to pull from the Center of Creative Leadership a list of qualities that they put out there: integrity, empathy, self-awareness, respect, communication, learning, and gratitude. And if I were to add to this list, my contribution would be ethics, open-mindedness, commitment to developing others, flexibility, collaboration, creativity, and the ability to make decisions. And lastly, willingness to take risks. In the past, these qualities were not always necessary to succeed, certainly not in the 70s when I came through. You could climb a straight career ladder to the top and be the boss. And the boss's power came from having a title and position. He or she could tell their staffs whatever they wanted them to do and expect that it would be done. A boss had the power to give and to take away promotions and salaries and professional opportunities. Often bosses had big egos or charisma, and they relished in the privilege of being the boss. But many of us have had bosses like that. And I don't think that's what a boss is. I've had good bosses and I've had wonderful bosses in my career. Leadership is not based on title or position. A real leader wants other people to be at their best and move forward together to achieve your organizational goals. Today's path to becoming a leader is not that straight line, that ladder. It's more like a winding staircase. Trust me from my experience. It's where the opportunities can appear at any time on that winding staircase. Peter Drucker, the father of management, put it this way: successful careers are not planned. They are developed when people are prepared for opportunities. At this point, you may be asking, how do I become a leader? Well, I can tell you from experience that leadership doesn't happen overnight. It develops over the course of your career. If you want to be a good leader, you have to work at it. Again, leaders are made. You have to be prepared at all times and do your research, keep learning, and stay current on what is happening in your field. Know enough about your area so that you can ask good questions. You will be surprised what an impact good questions can have on others. And keep learning. There is no wasted learning. It all adds up. Focus on your team and learn what they need in order to do their best. That's what good leaders do. They may not tell you that this directly, but what your team needs from you most is for you to listen to them. They want to be respected, supported, and celebrated. And as a leader, empathy is more important than ever before. Your staff, your teams, your colleagues, all of them have lives beyond work. They are affected by what is happening in their home, in their communities, and even in the world. Just think, in the last year alone, we have faced COVID, the war in Ukraine, climate change, and all the fires here in California, huge income disparities, political issues, violence in our community, the murder of George Floyd, and even now, not enough baby formula. These things impact us all. They affect our daily lives as well as our emotional and mental health. Leaders need to be aware of how people are feeling and try to help them to get through difficult times. That's what empathy is. Excuse me. At this point, I'd like to share with you some examples of the winding staircase of my career. So I hope I'm not too repetitive, but I just want to demonstrate what that looks like. When I was in college, I was a work study student and I worked in the financial aid office for 3 years. When I began, I did not know anything about financial aid, barely filled out the application correctly, but I was good at math and I was interested in business as a business major. So I thought this was a good opportunity to learn. The office was very busy as it is today, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So I started doing small tasks that someone needed done, just asking them. And I tried to do my best. And I was raised with a work ethic, like many of you, that when you do your work, you do it well. There were no shortcuts. And apparently my best was good, and I was given more complicated tasks to do. Over 3 years, I learned a lot about financial aid. And I also began to understand how important it is to listen and help other people succeed. I graduated from college in 3 years by surprise, and I needed a job. To my surprise, the financial aid director that I had worked for called me into his office one day, and I wasn't sure why I was there until he said, "I have a job for you." And naturally, I thought that was at the university. He said, "How would you like to be the financial aid director for a small college? It only has 2 financial aid programs, and I know you can do the job." I never expected that from him. I had planned to go to Wall Street, make a lot of money, come back and give it away to my community, because those are the values I was raised with. But he saw something in me and opened a door to an opportunity that started me on my path. I took the job. The main point of this story is that somebody is always watching. If you show up prepared, eager to learn, willing to work hard, and open to opportunities, somebody will notice and an opportunity will appear. That's how Dr. Simone Raffeltep got her job. I kept watching her, and one day I brought her in and said, "What are you doing? What do you do?" And she said, "This is what I do." And I said, "Well, you have a new job. I'm starting this new unit." And that's how she became the director of strategic partnership and community engagement. And my first job was right down the street at 1019 Gailey Avenue. That's where I learned about federal regulations and tax laws and more about managing money. And I learned how important financial aid was to students, not just to me, but to other students and other families, particularly from underserved communities. And I saw how income disparities limited opportunities for students. And I wanted to help students receive financial aid and get a college education that would change their lives. And now I've been doing that for over 40 years. I was moved by that mission to help other individuals, but it was not a step I had planned on taking. The president of the college and the staff where I worked were good leaders. And my boss was very supportive. A supportive boss is important. I was promoted several times in my 5 years that I was there, and I had responsibilities later for student billing and overseeing the accounting office. And I was encouraged to go to professional conferences and learn more about the field. They wanted me to succeed, and I was quite happy there. Now I'm going to share something personal, and I haven't shared these stories in many, many decades. During this time, my husband, who was in the service, got very ill and was finally disabled. All of a sudden, I needed a better paying job, and another opportunity appeared that on that winding staircase. So I made a big jump. I became the director of financial aid at the University of La Verne. That was much larger. It was a much bigger job. The university had undergraduate and graduate programs, 2 law schools, a large continuing education program, and even an Armenian college. And I was stretched there, but I was confident in my skills and abilities. And if you want to grow as a leader, it is good to take assignments that stretch you. You will see that you can do big things even when you don't feel prepared. Things like developing new policies and procedures and working with big data and solving complex problems comes from stretching yourself. You will interact with more people, including those at higher levels in your organization. So stretch yourself, and your confidence will grow as you get opportunities to be a leader. During my time at the University of La Verne, I got my MBA, I learned about admissions, I took law school courses and continuing education classes, and got more involved in professional organizations. I served on committees and started to meet leaders in my field. And then, unfortunately, during that process, my husband died. All of a sudden, I was a widow with a 2-year-old child. You've probably heard people say, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. Well, it did to me. And I had to find a way to move forward. I want to pause here for a minute and talk about finding balance in your life, because those were challenging years for me. I was a working mother with a small child, and I can tell you there is no such thing as balance. And it is impossible to do everything. So my approach was to integrate my home life and my work life. For example, in the last 2 semesters of my MBA program, I took my 2.5-year-old son to school with me. Now, this is in the 80s. So there were only 8 women in my class. So you can imagine what the reaction was when I showed up with a baby. But we sat in the back and he was quiet and I persevered and I did my job and I raised my child. And even though I was tired at the end of each day, I was passionate about all of it. And somehow I made it work, probably with some blessings from heaven there. The main point I want to make is that leadership requires sacrifice. It isn't always an easy journey to become a leader, but you have to keep investing in yourself. You have to keep focused and keep believing that around the turns in the spiral staircase, there are opportunities waiting for you. I guarantee you, over the course of my career, I had opportunities that I never imagined. After leaving La Verne, I went to Occidental College as the director of financial aid, and I also worked in admissions. And next, I went to Harvey Mudd College as director of financial aid and the associate dean of admission. Later on, I became the dean of admission and financial aid at Harvey Mudd College. And with every opportunity, my responsibilities grew and I got more involved in my professional organizations, which led me to leadership positions. My network expanded, and so did my opportunities to be a leader. While I was at Harvey Mudd College, I served on the Bill and Melinda Gates Scholarship Advisory Committee board for Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I've been doing that now for almost 20 years. After 8 years as an active member of the college board, I was elected the chairman of the board of trustees of the college board And these were different times. I was the 4th Black person and the 2nd Black woman in that position in the College Board's first 100 years of existence. Also, I was president of Western Association for this, for financial aid, this, that, and the other, and then had the privilege from serving on those regional boards to serving on national boards. I had many opportunities for other positions while I was at Harvey Mudd, but I loved my job and I didn't have a reason to leave. Not until 10 years later, when I was granted a sabbatical for a year, which was a privilege from the president. And while I was on sabbatical, I got a call from Dr. Nancy Cantor. Some of you may know her. She was then the chancellor of Syracuse University and just a fabulous leader. She had heard about me and asked if I would be the first associate vice president for enrollment management at Syracuse University. This was a fantastic opportunity, but again, it required sacrifice, not just for me, but for my husband and my 2 children. It was a hard decision to move all the way to New York, right out just 2 hours from Canada, but it was an exciting opportunity and my family agreed that I should take it. And I did, and we had 5 incredible years with Dr. Cantor. She was a role model, she was a leader, she was a mentor, and she remains a good friend today. And working for incredible leaders, there is no substitute. During my time at Syracuse, my professional involvement grew, and so did my reputation. And I was an advisor and expert witness to President Obama's White House task force on middle-class families, led by then President Joe Biden. And I served with 2 other expert witnesses, Treasury of the Secretary, Timothy Geithner, and Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan. Can you imagine having those kinds of opportunities? And the task force was about making college more accessible and affordable for middle-class families. As a representative of the College Board, I served 2 years on major projects supported by foundations like the Andrew Mellon Foundation and the Lumina Foundation and the Spencer Foundation. And one I remember in particular was a report that we released, and you can Google and find it, Rethinking Student Aid, that was published, an important report that was published on fulfilling the commitment and reforming federal student aid. And, you know, other things came up. Serving on the National Clearinghouse Board, and I was a faculty at the University of Southern California, which Brittany mentioned in my introductory, and I still teach there today. The main point here is that throughout my career, people noticed me, and people will notice you, and opportunities for leadership will appear. And sometimes they're not what you expect. The opportunities will take you places that you never imagined. When I was recruited to UCLA to start the new Division of Enrollment Management, I wasn't ready to leave Syracuse University, but the opportunity to work at a leading public university that is committed to access for first-generation students, to Pell Grant recipients, to students from underserved communities and students with different identities, it was compelling. And UCLA's senior leadership was also very convincing. And so there was another example of an opportunity that came my way. And my team and I just celebrated a 10th year anniversary for enrollment management. And I'm proud of what we've accomplished together with the help and support of all of our campus colleagues. Many of you are on this webinar today. And so I wanna close where I began, and that's talking about the shift in leadership. Said very simply, leadership is about bringing people together to move forward. The evidence of being a good leader is that people are following you. If you look around and nobody's following you, you are not leading, you are taking a walk. You are just taking a walk. You should see that somebody is following, whether it's students or mid-level professionals. Do your best to develop your leadership qualities and skills at every point in your career. People will notice, and opportunities for leadership will appear. If it's not the opportunity that you want, know that there are that being open to new opportunities can do you well. I never worked on Wall Street, but I sure have had a lot of meetings on Wall Street, and that's good enough for me. I could not have found a profession more in line with my personal and my professional values than what I am doing today in the field of education. But I would have never landed on this field had I not been willing to open up, not just once, not twice, but multiple times to new opportunities. Be patient. Don't be hard on yourself. Give yourself a break. You know, sometimes we can just drive ourselves crazy trying to be the best at everything. You'll get there. Give yourself time. Be open to engaging on new projects, things that you never imagined doing. And I have several directors who are doing things they didn't think they would be doing. But it's hard to find good talent, people with good skill sets, maturity, and a willingness to work with other people. That's not easy to find. So when leaders spot them, we will call on them to take on other leadership responsibilities. And as a result of that, I think they will say to you, they've grown tremendously, tremendously. So get rid of that notion that we're climbing this career ladder, and get rid of the notion that you're the boss so you can tell people what to do and not worry about how they feel about it. And think about that grand spiral staircase that I think many of us have been on, and you get to the middle of it and it just looks like you're marching, but the staircase is moving. It's moving you upward toward greater responsibilities, greater opportunities, greater excitements, adventures. Be willing to open up. And by the way, when someone like me or your colleague next to you or someone else you know in the community, in your faith-based center, wherever that is, when they say, I think you should do this, don't just brush it off. Think about it. They're saying they see something in you that will allow you to be successful at that opportunity. So I hope this has helped you. Go forth, do good work. Thanks for being here. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. God bless you.
Well, you heard it. You heard it. She's offered to answer questions and we want them. We want them. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I have a page full of notes. I know that the rest of the audience does too. Some of the praise and affirmation that you can check out in the chat. One of them says you should run for president. So I'm just saying that, but there's so much more. So hopefully you'll get a chance to read that. But we do have a couple of questions in the chat. All right, so the first question is coming from Vianney. And the question is, when things got hard and difficult for you, single, working mom, grieving, etc., what kind of things did you do to keep focused on the bigger picture?
Well, I'll tell you this, and many of you can identify with this. My faith sustained me. And it is not hard. And quite honestly, I was coming to tears thinking about that. And in my current marriage, it's been 34 years. But you never forget those that you love and that are dear to you. But I will say this too. I had to learn how to accept help from other people. I had to be vulnerable. And sometimes we think we have to be strong. You know, I am woman, I am man, I am leader, I am fill in the blank, right? But we need help on these career journeys. And that was one of the things I learned from that, to be human, to be vulnerable, and to be willing to accept help.
Wow, thank you for saying that. That kind of reminds me of yesterday when Martin Jarman got vulnerable with our audience. And I think that you're onto something with that. So thank you for saying that. The next question is, as a leader, how do you deal and learn from the mistakes that you have made?
Oh, that's a good one. So one of the things I try to practice, and it's been several decades now, I learned it in one of, those professional workshops, is to have periods of self-reflection. And each night I review what I did that day. Because, you know, many of you are in demanding jobs where, especially if you're front facing with students, and lots of things come on your plate. And so I've learned through professional development workshops to have periods of reflection. Today, they talk about mindfulness. And I try to practice that regularly and self-reflection is good because it helps you to see how you can do things better. Even after this time with you, I'll do some self-reflection. You know, I'm honored to have been asked. Many could have been asked, right? But this invitation has caused me to reflect on my own career. And I would hope that as a part of my reflection, it'll make me think in different ways about how I can continue to help my division, the staff under my leadership, to move forward.
Well, I can say firsthand, you actually already do that. So you're being humble, and having you here is a true honor and pleasure. We have a few more minutes, so would you be okay if we take a few more questions?
Sure, I'm all yours.
All right, here we go. All right, this is a meaty one. How does a leader remain humble, authentic, and willing to work with anyone? That's part one. And then the other part is, how does a leader remain focused on the bigger picture goals? And this person is asking because they've previously worked for various leaders, and some seem to have it down, almost feel natural to them, and others seem to have lost their way a little bit. And then others maybe not present, not receptive, not engaged, or not supportive at all. So again, to repeat the question, how does a leader remain humble, authentic, and willing to work with anyone?
Well, what comes to mind is what my mother picked up from somewhere, I think, I can't remember where. But she would always tell us, and I'm one of 5 children in the family, and she would always tell us, it's not about you. It's still not about you. It was never about you. And I carried that, those childhood sayings into my profession. It's not about us as the leaders. It's about the mission. It's about doing the work and empowering other people to be good partners. And that's another session that I'm sure, you know, you've had lots of workshops on. So that's the humbleness. To remember that. I think if we all remember that, regardless of what our jobs are, we can learn a lot. And then in terms of the big picture, you know, the day-to-day work that we do can keep us focused on the wrong things. I call them, and oh my God, you guys are having me say things I haven't said in years, but I call them lizards. And I'm a gardener. That's what I do in my spare time, and every day if I can. I see lots of lizards in my backyard, thanks to sunny California. And the one thing I learned about lizards is I could see a lizard at 10 a.m. in the morning. And if I leave and go take a lunch break and come back to gardening, that lizard is still sitting there at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. Well, I think there are people lizards too. The people who come into your office and take up all of your time, get you off track, and they can come one behind the other. They don't mean to be lizards. Some lizards are cute. But, you know, they're paper lizards. They'll stack of things in your office that you say you're going to read, literature, blah, blah, blah. You know, we all have them on our desk. You know, clutter distracts us. Get rid of the clutter. Unfortunately, I'm helping people in my office that help me to get rid of the clutter. And then protect your time at work so you're focused on the things that are important, the tasks before you and the bigger picture. And then if you're in a position to get help, I don't care whether it's student help or a colleague or someone else, surround yourself with good people who can help you stay focused on the big picture. I have Scott, who you guys are going to interact with later, and I have a director's team that help me stay focused. And then in turn, I help them stay focused on the big picture because it's about our students. It's not about me. It's not about you. Never was about us.
So yeah, you're right. So it sounds like it's a big picture thing. I like that advice. We have another question. I think this is going to be our last one, and I want to give you a moment to just close this out as well. This question is coming from Eric. What is a piece of advice that you received in the past that you think has been the most helpful to you in your career and personal life?
Well, two things come to mind. The first is my faith. That sustains me. So, because whatever your faith is, there are values in our faith that encourages us and help us to understand that there are ebbs and flows in life, and everything is not going to be howdy all day. I had to draw back again from the South to get that one. It's not going to be howdy all day, right? So, so I know tomorrow is going to be a better day, every day. You'll get through it. And so that's one thing. The other thing I would say that's been most helpful is advice from that first financial aid director, who is in his late 80s now, living in Nevada. And he said, don't be so hard on yourself. You know, we're constantly critiquing ourselves. And we see ourselves in ways sometimes that others don't. If you're one of those individuals, I'll give you this little piece of advice that was similar from my 11th grade English teacher. When we would be writing papers, she would say, imagine that you have an editor, and that editor sits on your shoulder. And she gave us the assignment to dress our editor. And for whatever reason, my editor to this day, he is a dumpy looking Englishman with a top hat and a plaid jacket on and kind of stuffy and has a tie, a bow tie on. I don't know where I got that, but today that is still my editor because I still use this tip from the 11th grade. And she said, when you're stuck with writing something and you keep, crossing out before you can write, you don't get into the flow. She said, look at your shoulder and tell that editor, take a hike, I'm writing. Because that editor was really our inner thoughts. Keep telling it's not good enough, it's not big enough, it's not, creative enough or whatever it is. And we can't be our best selves and develop into the people we want to be if we're constantly telling ourselves it's not good enough. I should have done this, I should have done that. No, get rid of your editor. By the way, dress your editor, it does work. Get rid of your editor, and so that you can focus on moving forward. So, wow, that was a flashback for me of a lot of years. I'll just say this for closing from my standpoint. First of all, thank you again, because even this time spent writing and thinking about what I could say to you that might be helpful brought back some lessons that I haven't thought about in a while. But I want to leave you with this. You're here for a reason and a purpose. In the space that you occupy now, whatever that role is. We're all working together for one mission at UCLA, at the UC system, in higher education, wherever it might be. Do good where you are with what you have. Do good where you are with what you have. And be open to new opportunities, even if it has you taking a sidestep. I took a 40-year sidestep when I accepted that job down the street on Gailey Avenue. But I still got to Wall Street. And I know a whole lot of folks on Wall Street, and they're called donors. And they've helped me to do good and you to do good because of these relationships that we formed. So thank you. I wish I could give all of you a big hug. I wish you well, continued success for everything that you've learned here and for how you'll carry it forward.
Wow, 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 wow. Well, I know that if we could hear it, there would be a sounding applause for everyone that is here. We want to thank you so much. We really, really do. What you shared has been great food for thought. And now we need to take a quick break so that we can sort of digest some of that information. All right. So thank you so much for being here with us. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. Up next is our change management and communication panel. So we'll see you back here at 1:50, which is just in a few minutes.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Chris Cabrera Thompson, member of the Conference Planning Committee and AMG's IT coordinator. It's my pleasure to introduce our next session, which is a discussion focused on change management and communications. Today, we're joined by Associate Vice Chancellor and Chief Information Officer, Lucy Avitisian. Also joining us is Director of Media Relations for UCLA Strategic Communications, Bill Kisliuk. Lucy, we'll start with you. Please tell us about your department, size, and mission.
Chris, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm leading Central IT services, and it's comprised of 325 career and contract employees. Our scope is currently evolving. We have both academic and administrative technology services that we provide to the campus. And when you think about our mission, it's really to strengthen the foundation of technology and drive innovation to advance the strategic goals of the university. There are 6 key areas to the organization that I lead. It's information security, application services, enterprise technology services, customer engagement and support, help desk, enterprise data and analytics, and then strategy, planning, and operations, which is the newest part of the organization and is focused on building the enterprise-wide portfolio management and the change management practices, because we are introducing a lot of change regularly, and we want to be very mindful of how we do that as it can disrupt the campus environment. We are actually in the process of implementing 3 solutions that some of you may be familiar with: the learning management system, Bruin Learn, the new implementation of the new financial system, and an implementation of the new financial aid system. What I also want to share that in the past 2 years that I've joined UCLA, I've been very proud of the team that I lead. They've been working extremely hard to support the campus and enable, the continuous hybrid operations during the crisis. But I also am very fortunate to meet a lot of technologists outside of my organization who have been doing an instrumental job supporting their constituents in transitioning our operations into a remote environment. I think among many initiatives that we are part of, my team has been focusing on curating and supporting the campus through digital capabilities and toolkits. And I'm going to ask the host to share the link in the chat related to the digital toolkit that was curated by ITS for our faculty, for our students and our staff to enable a new way of working through different communication collaboration tools and other technologies that are very relevant to our day-to-day work. I think, if I may, I'm going to ask the same question of Bill. Bill, can you tell us a little about your department and your mission and the size?
Yeah, hi, Lucy. Thanks very much. And it's great to be on a panel with you, an honor. I appreciate it. So the Office of Strategic Communications has about 80 people, and our mission is to tell the story of the university and our community in bold new ways in an effort to inspire positive action. And thank you, colleagues on behind the scenes, for posting that first slide there. And so people can see pretty much what I just said. This is our mission as identified by our Vice Chancellor for Strategic Communications, Mary Osako. If you can move to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about some of the values that drive us in strategic communications. Because we're working with units across campus, administrative units, professional schools, the college, a lot of the units that provide services to the university community, it's really important for us to earn trust and have trust with people when we work with them, because because each day is a little bit different. Collaboration is super important. One of Mary's sayings that she likes to refer to is "be like water," which is another way of reminding us that every day is different, and be prepared to go somewhere that you didn't think you were going to yesterday, or take on a responsibility or task that is maybe new to you or maybe unexpected, but roll with it, grow with it, and do your best. And now looking at the rest of these values, investing in our people and being bar raisers. I'm going to return later to the topic of bar raisers because that is also what we call our program of kind of educational programs for people who have work in the communication space. And I'd like to provide a link to that later that people can see what sort of programs we've put together here at Strategic Communications. Consistent with university values, being agents of change for equity, diversity, and inclusion. Invent and simplify is a process that Mary believes in, where when you're brainstorming, just always trying to bring it back to the core message, the most important thing that needs to get done, not get caught up necessarily in our lingo or our position or something that we're stuck on, but try to see it from 10,000 feet, get a sense of what really needs to be accomplished. Experiment and fail forward. That's a challenging one for some of us individually because it is riskier than saying, no, we'll let this one pass. But you go out there and step your foot out there and try to do the right thing and learn from it one way or the other. And that's always a valuable experience. And then finally, deliver results for our partners. The next slide is one that I'd like to spend just a minute on to explain more about our organization, because we are, I think, unusual within the university structure. But here's basically the different units within Strategic Communications. We have a brand marketing team, which promotes the UCLA brand and our perceptions about us in the broader community. The entities within that include the content studio, which develops videos, infographics, messages on social media, statements, just different sort of a creative team, creators. And the social media team is really crucial. People who understand how social media work, posting on it, monitoring it, and making sure that we're well positioned with our university official channels across social media. That would include Instagram and Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok are places that we're most active, also LinkedIn. And then our broadcast studio, which is here in the building where I am, which is the James West Alumni Center, right in the heart of campus. We have a broadcast studio that includes all kinds of great recording gear and a green screen for faculty and leadership to use. Sometimes they'll come in here and give a television interview or a radio interview, or when we're producing our own materials, we'll use that studio. I'm part of the media relations team, and I'm going to circle back to that one last, actually. UCLA owned media would include a couple of things. We have the website, newsroom.ucla.edu, where we post all kinds of news about faculty achievement, research achievement, student achievement, cool news about the university across the spectrum. And then UCLA Magazine, which is directed towards our hundreds of thousands of living alumni. The executive communications team is a really important and interesting team. That's colleagues of mine who are speech writers and doing other work in support of the executive leadership of the university, the chancellor and our vice chancellors. The chancellor does an enormous amount of speechifying, presenting, media opportunities, and we're here to support him and other leaders when they are in those situations. We have an insights and analytics team, which is really fascinating, doing work on how successful our messages are on getting out. When we look at, when we'll post something on social media or on the newsroom, see how many readers it's gotten, see how much engagement it's gotten. We're constantly comparing what we're doing to what we view as peer universities, what we see as peer universities, as well as kind of others that are in our space. It's important also to look at news or information about UCLA that was not generated by our team, but is in fact about us coming from other channels. So the Insights team is a very sophisticated tool, and it's exciting to work with that group of people. When I have a button in there for MarCom, which is short for Marketing and Communications, but in this case, what I mean by that is there's communications people across many departments and professional schools and the college across the university who are working in the same space, but representing not the university as a whole, but their units, their schools, their institutes, their offices. And we try to collaborate with them as much as possible so that they can see what we're doing, so we can see that they're doing, and we can work together to elevate the positive messages that we're putting out and share resources. And finally, I just want to make reference to the great business services people that are part of Stratcom, HR, and everybody else who supports us and keeps us up in the air. And when I go back to media relations, that's the team that I'm a part of. We divided into two teams, if you will. One of them is kind of offense, and the other one is defense in a sense. The outreach and pitching team is a group of people who are aware of different research activities or faculty leaders, student leaders across the university who would make for good stories in the media, and they will pitch them to the LA Times and television and other media to write and to cover UCLA in important ways when we have important events or great research or other things going on. The issues management team, that's the team that I am part of. And what I'm really working on is looking at challenging issues that affect the university and requests for information about them and finding the best way to communicate that. So that might have to do with explaining our policies when it comes to, for example, you know, what our COVID health and safety policies are, what's happening with housing, what's happening with, say, public safety on campus, and communicating to the media about that. My colleagues and I, we do a lot of work with the Daily Bruin, but we also work a great deal with the Los Angeles Times and national outlets in print and electronic media. So that's kind of an overview of what we do. And, you know, Lucy, when I think about what you do in the presentation, you know, the answer you just gave to that first question. So your title is the leader of our information technology team, but you have degrees in political science, journalism, and business, everything but information technology. So would you share with us a little bit about your professional journey?
I'm happy to do that, Bill. Actually, you're absolutely right. I have 3 degrees from University of Southern California, none in IT. The 2 undergraduate degrees, political science and broadcast journalism, and then an executive MBA. You know, I often joke that for the CIOs today, those skill sets are more relevant and more important than being a technology expert in this one field, right? I think my day-to-day work is so much more focused on networking, connecting, you know, understanding the campus-wide challenges, opportunities, politics, also communicating and operating a complex organization or leading the change with a complex organization. So it works. My journey. So I had a dream of becoming a broadcast journalist, and it basically quickly tilted toward joining Central IT back at USC, where I've spent 21 years of my career. And I think that was a more convenient transition into the workforce, and I'll explain why. So I worked there as a work study for 3 years and saw an excellent opportunity to pursue a career in this growing field and apply my communication skills to develop web content for the university. Besides, I had recently met my soon-to-be husband, who's a talented classical cellist, and moving away to Abilene, Texas to become a broadcaster just wasn't the thing I wanted to do at the time. So I started as a web designer and content developer, and quickly realized that, you know, I was so passionate about technology and had excellent opportunities to explore other areas of IT within the organization, such as, you know, application development, data analytics, business analysis, project and change management. I think one thing that helped me get exposed to so many different technology areas is that I never shied away from kind of asking to be part of the most challenging project. I knew it was going to be difficult. I knew I was going to be working super hard, but I saw those as, you know, really good opportunities to learn, I think, which exposed me to different areas of the organization and allowed me to grow into a IT leadership position. It didn't take me too long to realize that, yeah, I love technology, but I'm more passionate about connecting with our customers, our constituents, and understanding their challenges and how technology can solve that for them. And later on, toward the last 5 or 6 years, it was very clear to me that, you know, my true passion lies in building and leading teams in hopes of advancing the higher ed mission through technology. So my last 2 years at USC, I was the deputy CIO, and that work was primarily focused on the digital transformation for the campus, rebuilding the central IT organization, instituting new operating model, introducing services that were better aligned with our constituents' needs. It was back in December of 2019, I received an email asking me to consider the UCLA CIO position. At that time, we had already built a new organization at USC. I was so happy to have recruited outstanding leaders who could continue the vision of digital transformation there. And I knew it was time for me to step aside, give them the opportunity to, elevate their roles, or some of them, and explore something new and challenging to continue my development journey. And here I am today, leading Central IT, and I'm just so honored and thankful for this wonderful opportunity. I have another question for you, Bill. You worked in 2 UCLA professional schools, I believe law and engineering, before you moved into Stratcom. What lessons did you learn from those experiences?
Thanks for the question, Lucy. That's right. I worked, for many years before I joined UCLA, I worked in the newspaper profession. I was a reporter and an editor before I joined UCLA. And when I came, I started as a communications lead for the Henry Samueli School of Engineering and Applied Science. And then I took a similar position with UCLA School of Law before joining Stratcom 2 years ago. And, one thing that I love about working at UCLA is regularly being in contact with, truly brilliant people. It was inspiring to watch Yolanda Copeland Morgan in that first session because, I like to say she's a tough act to follow, except for she's so clearly not an act. She's really genuine, and she's bringing that to her work every day. She excels at her work, and I do get the opportunity to deal with Yolanda a fair amount. There's a lot of media interest in our admissions and enrollment practices, and so we deal with Yolanda and her teammates, including Gary Clark, and they're just great. It's just really inspiring to be in touch with her. And it was like that at the School of Engineering and the School of Law too. There's just these impossibly smart, really high capacity people in so many fields across the university. And sometimes it's a little scary or intimidating to be, in conversation with them. They're just operating at warp speed. They're processing things at multiple levels. I'm just trying to get my little piece of business done. And it's just really neat to be among people like that. At the engineering school, one thing that was fun was, there's just so many cool things to see at the engineering school. There's these really interesting labs with robots and plasma generators, which are kind of super sci-fi, and these $1 million machines where you use them to coat semiconductors with a film that might have a capacity to be, to convey heat or to not convey heat, just to do these different things. It was just so neat. And then at the law school, which is way less interesting from a physical standpoint, there's the faculty there are a generation or two ahead of us in thinking about social problems and societal problems and justice and equality. And so it's really fun to interact with them and really brilliant students. Plus the roster of guest speakers that come to the law school is just unbelievable. It's just a who's who. If it wouldn't be a bad life to just hang around the law school and go to the different events and learn from those people. So pretty exceptional place. But I think the best answer for this group as to what I learned from the professional schools is that it's important to recognize that units like the law school and the engineering school, and this is probably true of every unit on campus, has their own mission that may or may not align in any given day with exactly what the university's mission is as a whole. They have their own focus, their own needs, they have their own enterprises going on. And today I work for the university. It's sort of what I think of as the municipality of UCLA, because in my job, I'm constantly reminded we house 20,000 people. We have a fire department, we have a police department, we provide healthcare services to hundreds of thousands of people across the university, and so much more. And my office is working in the direction of the chancellor and UCLA leadership. But when I was in the law school or the engineering school, I worked for the dean, I worked for the school, not the university, on issues that were of really high importance for those units, but may not have otherwise been noticed by anybody else around campus. And so what it taught me really was to try to have the greatest possible mutual understanding of goals and needs when collaborating with people from other units and trying to help them get where they're going. Understand why the units are different, why the document or the process that you created for one purpose is not going to work in this purpose and it needs to be tweaked. Things that you've already prepared are not always applicable, and to work with people to try to figure it out, because they're their true north is sometimes just a little bit different than what the universities might be as a whole. Just as quick examples, at the law school, the students there, it's a graduate school. They've already done brilliantly well in their undergraduate careers. They've probably taken a couple of years to work in the world. And when they come to UCLA, they're not interested in the football team. They're not interested in Greek life. They're not sweating what's happening in housing, which is different than a lot of other units on campus. They have different needs and you need to respond to them differently. And it's a really, really diverse community. Obviously with the pandemic as well, there's just been so much change across units. I have a question back for you, Lucy, which is, the pandemic has changed a lot, but with the increased emphasis that we have now on remote learning and remote operations, how do you anticipate the changing needs of the university and needs continuing to change?
Great question. I think the disruption of the past 2 years is driving a fundamental change in how we work and how we leverage technology. I think as a campus, we have embraced flexibility and remote work. We've implemented the flex work operating model at levels that would have been impossible just a few years ago. Just the thought of it would just not be real. And our employees, as I understand, are on board. We conducted a administration-wide work environment survey, and we heard from our employees that they're appreciative of the opportunity. I think we all know that it's going to take some time for us to fully understand the impact of the pandemic, but it is clear to me that hybrid work is here to stay, and our students are seeking for hybrid learning opportunities and different experiences that are enabled through technology. Going back to our workforce, I currently have 70% of my team members working remotely. I don't think it's ever going to change. It somewhat has helped ITS to retain our talent who were looking for flexibility and autonomy. And I understand that those opportunities aren't offered to all employees, as some roles do require on-site presence. But we need to think about ways to make this a fair approach for the campus. And please know that a lot of leaders are thinking through that. I think more reliance on technology because it's proven to enable a lot of things, our remote functions during the COVID crisis. It wasn't all perfect. It was challenging at times. I remember personally when I joined back 2 years ago in May of 2020, my transition was 100% remote. And I vividly remember that first all staff meeting. I was so excited to meet the team and quickly realized how challenging it's going to be to get to know them via Zoom. I still struggle. I always appreciated the opportunity to walk in, welcome the people as they walked into meetings, read the room, watch people's reactions as I spoke or shared whatever the information it is, and know when to kind of elaborate, pause, or ask questions or engage in different ways. But it was going to be impossible with roughly 300 individuals that were in the session during my first all staff. And I could only see 9 of them, and one of it was my own picture there. During this crisis, I think stepping into this role has brought greater responsibilities and challenges that I anticipated when I initially applied. And it took a while to remotely get accustomed to how the university operates, understand the technology ecosystem and the transformational opportunities, and partner with all these different units throughout the campus. You just mentioned how different the two are, but imagine the 40+ units who have their own roadmaps and their own priorities and their own challenges. This was very, very hard. But then I pause and think about, what if this crisis happened 20 or 30 years ago? How would we even survive? How would we even continue? And the role of technology and the key role that it has played in the last 2 years needs to be recognized. And I think it's an opportunity for us to say, hey, we're not going to go back to 2019 and operate the way we were, but just kind of pause and think about, where are we headed as higher ed? Where are we headed as an institution? And what is the new role technology is going to play in enabling that? We also have students who are coming in who we call digital natives, who have different needs, expectations from the experience they're going to have and the journeys they're going to have on our campus. And I think we need to be better connected to understand and enable those journeys for them. As it relates specifically to teaching and learning, you probably remember we chatted about the LMS, the new implementation of Grow and Learn, and that platform went live with the winter quarter back in January, and it was implemented in 9 months. It wasn't just a platform implementation. We wanted to take our time to really think about how to transform teaching and learning and take advantage of this unique opportunity as we're implementing an ecosystem of new tools. We spent a lot of time to think about, okay, is software as a service the right option, which it is? Is it redundant? Is it secure? We spend a lot of time making sure that privacy and accessibility and information security needs were thoroughly addressed and vetted as we were integrating our main Canvas platform with 35 plus other solutions to provide a holistic teaching and learning ecosystem. I know that a lot of you probably are passionate about change management and maybe are ProSci certified or apply the ADKAR model in the work that you do. I personally have been very passionate about this and have even invested in my former trainers all to be change management certified, because in IT, we always introduce change, right? And I believe that every leader needs to learn about change management and be comfortable with change management best practices. So recently, I concluded a program called UC Coro. It's a system-wide leadership development program, and I'm very thankful of the opportunity. I met wonderful people, and our final deliverable was a project focused on retaining our workforce and investing in our workforce. But throughout the program, I actually was exposed to the projects that the former cohorts had delivered. And one of them was a project from back in 2019, and the focus was change management and leadership. So I'm going to ask our colleagues here to drop some links in the chat that relate to the Coro 2019 deliverable that has several interviews and podcasts about change management. And these interviews are from with our leaders throughout the UC system. And if you only have just a little time, please focus on the interview with Michael Beck, who's my leader. And it's an impressive interview. It shows how passionate he is about change management and how much he recognizes the importance of it. And also from John Mazziota, who equally stresses the importance of change management, but may have a different perspective, which is extremely insightful and important for us to all hear. So I hope you will enjoy those podcasts, and you can also look into other ones that are listed there. But again, to reiterate, it is extremely important for us as change leaders, as leaders, to really understand and focus on change management. I have another question for you, Bill, and this is about social media. So social media really drives the news and narratives these days. And what tips do you have about organizational use and monitoring of social media?
Thanks, Lucy, for the question. And for the tips, I mean, I really am going to rely on my day in, day out interactions with members of the UCLA StratCom social media team, because they're working, they're just experts and they're great to work with. They have great intuitive feel for it. One thing that I would say for organizations or units within UCLA is to, in terms of using your social media accounts, I think it's important to stay true to your organization's brand or mission with what you post. There'll be temptations to sometimes put up something else cool or something that might be a little bit, off from the fundamental message that you want to give. And I would say, always try to tie what you're posting to a greater goal, a greater mission of your organization, your institution. If you had a chance to step back and develop a social media strategy for your unit, you would probably want to identify 2 or 3 messages or themes that you would want to get out there. And it might have to do with mission or values related to UCLA or particular initiatives that your unit is a part of. And kind of a good practice is to is to make sure that what you're doing is whatever you post is in alignment with those messages. Are you advancing it? Are you kind of deepening the message and deepening the understanding that when people see your organization on social or follow it on social, that they'll see things that are a consistent message over time? I think that's really valuable thing for organizations to do in particular. It's important to be careful not to create too much clutter, post too much, have too many different channels that are related, but may confuse people as to where authority lies within the university or who's doing what. And I think it's, so it's kind of important to have that a singular voice if you can. Create a regular cadence for when you post and be alert to the times of the day, the times of the week when they tend to have high traffic, so you get a good responsiveness to what you write or post. And I think it's also important to look through the other end of the telescope and it's important to curate who you follow, who your organization follows, and take steps to support those organizations or people whose interests align with yours. If you follow organizations and leaders that are in the same field as you are, and they follow you, what happens is that you have greater visibility for the work you do, greater credibility from the social media community, and it just places your organization where it needs to be. One other comment I would make, and then I know we're short on time, and I want to look at some of the answer some questions. Is one of the questions that my team gets a lot has to do with when things are going sideways on social media, which they frequently are, because social media, I mean, negative just plays more prominently in social media than positive does. It's just human nature, I guess. And to figure out how to react to that, the first thing I would say is take a deep breath and not get too caught up in the moment or the outrage of it, or trying to get into the conversation right away. Normally looking at it, giving it a little bit of breathing room is helpful. The things that my colleagues look for are to consider the source of the negative information and then make a determination as to whether you really need to respond to that source. If it's somebody's irresponsible, somebody who obviously doesn't really have any insight to what it is that they're commenting on, maybe you can let the wisdom of the crowd carry the day without having to say too much. Another thing to do is to watch the reaction to the post and the velocity of the reaction to the post. If a lot of people are engaged, if it's moving fast, then there may be an opportunity to intervene and change the conversation. But in a lot of cases, you can just kind of let it run its course and people will turn the channel, or a new item will come up and it will sink into the depths of social media topics. I'll just give one example of the opposite. When I was at the law school held an event on conflict in Kashmir, which is disputed territory. And somebody posted on Twitter that at the UCLA Law event, UCLA Law had not allowed people from a certain religious background into the event. And so we watched that conversation and we felt like we just had to straighten out the record on that. It was not factual. It was by somebody who wasn't there. And so we just intervened in the conversation briefly to say, this is not what happened. Everybody who wanted to get in got in. And what happened is the conversation continued, but it went off in another direction. Nobody challenged us on that, and it went in a more constructive place. So it's important to kind of observe social media. It is outrageous, and you want to throw things at your screen, but there's more profitable ways to look at it. So I just want to get that point out there. And then maybe we can, maybe we should look and see what's happening in the Q&A. There's a question for you, Lucy, if I can just throw it at you, I'll read it to you.
Sure.
And it's from Amber. And the question is, how do you create a culture of IT that is aligned with the UCLA academic schedule? IT staff, need to know the critical periods, the start and end of courses, grading, midterms, finals, but may lack awareness when working on projects. And Amber references Bruin Lean. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, happy to answer that. So I'll speak about our operational efforts first, and then project. For operational, so IT always introduces change. We do refreshes, we implement new solutions, and the way we do that is we have a master calendar that actually has all the key dates of the academic calendar reflected, so we don't do anything disruptive. We also partner with our stakeholders to understand if this change is made on this date, how palatable it would be for them to actually help their constituents through that. And a recent example is even, it's happening right now, the Security Bruin post that came out about the duo changes, right? We first went to our partners in the academic units, in fact, all units, and asked, hey, we're going to implement this change on the state. Would that work? And the response was, hey, maybe let's adjust it. And we did. So it's really continuous communication and partnership, awareness of the academic calendar, and integration of that in our calendar. So that is already happening as it relates to operations. In the project environment, I believe that the change management team does a really good job to understand what the academic calendar is. But when you implement significant changes like the learning management system, it impacts every faculty, every student. There's almost never a good time. So sometimes these changes may feel like, it's not the optimal time, but we try to coordinate with our deans, with our academic unit leaders, with our faculty champions to figure out what is going to be palatable for the organization. So please know that those efforts have happened and are continuing to happen, and we will get better at it as we go.
Great. Thank you very much, Lucy. And there's another question that maybe we can close our presentation on, and it's a question that came in the chat. Maybe we can both give it a shot, but since I'm asking first, you might have to answer first. And the question is, how can individual contributors champion change at UCLA? The question comes from Samantha.
Thank you, Samantha. I think if you understand the change and believe in that change, your actions and how engaged you are and how you speak of that change, you're already championing it. Whether you understand the value that change brings and you are speaking about it, sharing your thoughts with others, and explaining to them or directing them to the communication that can help them understand the change and be open to it, I think are some ways to do that. I'm sure I can think of more, but that's all that comes to mind right now. So Bill?
Thanks, Lucy, and thanks, Samantha. I hesitate to answer because I think Yolanda just nailed this question, and Lucy, you did too. So I feel like anything I would say is kind of lesser, but it does remind me of something about coming to UCLA, and how to embrace the work that we do and celebrate it and lift it. I spent a lot of years as a journalist, as a newspaper reporter, and then as a newspaper editor. And one thing that I loved about that, I loved journalism. I believed in journalism. I think it's an important institution. I thought it was fun to be a part of. I learned about the world, and I felt I was doing something positive and constructive, and it gave me a good feeling every day. And it was a little bit of a challenge when I came to UCLA because it wasn't a journalistic enterprise and I'm working for something different. But the fact is that UCLA is a spectacular place. We are a great place that is creating so much new knowledge, so much new information. We are developing people to be leaders and to do positive things in their communities, in the world, with their families, with their colleagues. It's really an exceptionally positive institution. And I feel like the way to create positive change here is to remember that and elevate UCLA as you see the work that we're doing. I think we're all very fortunate to work in a wonderful place that does positive things in the world, and the work that each of you and each of us are doing to advance the university is in itself contributing to positive change.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Lucy and Bill. This was an eye-opening discussion. Change management and communications are at the heart of so many initiatives across campus, and thank you for your insights. So let's take a break to stretch our legs, and when we return from our break, we'll learn what 3 of our campus resources have to offer. So see you back here in a few minutes.
Thank you everyone for joining us. And today we have a special group coming up for you. First and foremost, the person that we're going to be inviting up to speak right now during our campus resource spotlight is a person who actually was one of the co-founders of this very conference. That person is Ms. Diane. Ms. Diane, I want to thank you so very much for being here with us today. Because of you, this conference has been made possible, and we have continued to carry that torch. So I want to invite you up for a moment to go ahead and share about the School of Dentistry.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm very excited about this opportunity to share the School of Dentistry as a premier resource on campus for staff, faculty, and students, and your family and friends. I'll just give a little bit about myself. I've been part of the UC system for 23 years. And in my current position with the School of Dentistry, I am the General Clinic Supervisor for New Patient Services. I was a board member, as it was already said, with AMG from 2014 to 2020, and a chair along with Paris McDonald for the Leadership Conference from 2017 to 2020. And I'm very excited to once again contribute to this amazing effort. So let's talk about the School of Dentistry. Paul Cresbach is the dean here, and we are located on Tiverton across the street from the Botanical Gardens. And so the School of Dentistry has been around since 1964, and we rank among the top 6 dental schools across the nation, or across the world, actually, globally. So the School of Dentistry has 400 plus student dentists. They have 400 plus faculty dentists and 100 plus residents. We have 3 clinic locations and 12 specialty clinics. The School of Dentistry itself is located in Westwood, and there are 3 provider levels, which are student dentists, residents, and faculty. The next location is the Faculty Practice Group, which is across the street in the Medical Plaza in Suite 350. That provider level is strictly faculty, and they operate like a private sector. And then the third location is in the Venice Dental Clinic, which is in Venice, obviously, and they also have a provider level of students, residents, and faculty. The difference is, when it comes to fees, the difference is the faculty fees are very similar to the private sector. The resident fees are lower than the faculty fees or in the private sector. And the dental students, who, by the way, are supervised by faculty, are considerably lesser than the private sector. So you have several options here. And let me say, our faculty are super specialists, researchers, and innovators, and welcome the most advanced challenges. So much as that private sectors referred their patients to our specialty clinics. And as you can see, we have 12 specialty clinics. And let me just name those clinics across the board, the dentistry that we provide across the board. So there's endodontics, aesthetic dentistry, oral and maxillofacial surgery, oral medicine, oral facial pain, orthodontics, oral pathology, oral radiology, pediatric dentistry, periodontics and implant surgery, prosthodontics, and restorative dentistry. That's a tongue tire. It's a lot. We do a lot here, and we're very proud of it. So let me talk about fees again. Well, we discussed fees, but let me talk about, we do take insurance and cash and credit payments. We do take the UCLA, we mostly have the Delta Dental Insurance, so we do take that. We do not take HMO plans, we don't do. And some clinics do take the Denti-Cal or the Medi-Cal / Denti-Cal plan. So we're a full service clinic. If you choose to come here and be part of the pre-doc program, which is where the students are getting their training, it does take a lot longer because these are the students in training than it would be if you went to the faculty practice or if you went to one of the specialty clinics. So usually I say it's maybe not a good fit for staff because you have to spend a real chunk of time unless you plan to take, half a day. So that's what we have here. It's a great pleasure to be able to tell you just a little bit about the clinic, and I hope to see you and your family and friends in the new patient services, which is where I will be, and happy to welcome you in. And that's it. Now I want to switch it over to Kimberly Terrell with the UCLA Career Center. Thank you for having me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kimberly Terrell, and I'm the Associate Director for Career Education and Engagement at the UCLA Career Center. And whether you're a new or veteran supervisor for student employees, you know that you play a really important leadership role in helping our students achieve their professional goals. Leading student employees can be very rewarding, but it can also be overwhelming sometimes. So I'm going to briefly provide an overview of the supervisor resources that we can provide to assist employees in learning soft skills and developing experiences that, in conjunction with their academic coursework, will prepare students to achieve their career goals. Okay, so why is this important? Well, recently, many employers report that college graduates have the academic background that they need to be successful, but they are lacking in the soft skills that make them career ready. So what is career readiness? On this next slide, there are several elements that make students career ready. Career readiness is basically a foundation from which students can demonstrate the requisite core competencies that broadly prepare them for success in the workplace. Based on research done by the National Association of Colleges and Employers, or NACE, about employer feedback, NACE put together a list of the 8 most important career readiness competencies for students. And as supervisors, you are in a perfect position to help your students not only develop these skills, but really learn how to articulate them when, putting them on a resume, talking about them in a cover letter, an interview, or even while networking. So what are they? The first and most important one really is career and self-development, which is when a student can proactively develop themselves and their career. Communication, or clearly and effectively exchanging information, ideas, and facts. Critical thinking, identifying and critically analyzing situational context and using that information to make stronger decisions. Equity and inclusion really is being able to demonstrate the awareness and skills required to equitably engage and include people from different local and global cultures, and engage in anti-racist practices that actively challenge the systems and structures of racism. For leadership, we want to make sure our students can recognize and capitalize on personal and team strengths to achieve organizational goals. We want them to demonstrate professionalism through effective work habits and act in the interest of their larger community, to build and maintain relationships and work effectively toward common goals through developing teamwork skills. And finally, understanding and leveraging technology in an ethical way within their work. Student employment plays an outsized role in helping all of our student employees develop these skills. So how can supervisors lead through soft skill development? Well, for one thing, you can always include soft skills within the position description if you're using one. So include what the skills the student's going to gain on their job. During the hiring practice, you can provide an overview of the skills and competencies the student may gain in the role, but be sure you specifically ask the student how this position fits in with their career goals. When you're doing training, you can include soft skills either in the initial training or in ongoing trainings that you have with your student employees. And when you're supervising employees one-on-one, make sure you're asking them how they're developing and using their soft skills within their work and get them used to talking about it. When you're doing evaluations, you can incorporate and weave career competencies into the formal eval. And I really encourage employers who are working with student employees to ask students to reflect on their career competency skills and how they grew during that period that you're reviewing. Finally, for yourself, for supervisors out there, how are you using your leadership skills to demonstrate and improve your soft skills within this context? Now, the Career Center can actually provide quite a few resources for anyone who's interested in learning more about career readiness. So we can provide definitions of career readiness competencies along with examples of the behavior that a student might engage in when doing these competencies and how you can tell that a student has them. We can provide tips for using career readiness in supervision. And if you're doing training and you would like us to, someone from the Career Center can come and do presentations for the students on career readiness and strengths development. So that's really what we can provide to help UCLA student supervisors to develop their student skills, their skills supervising students and helping students develop their competencies. And with that, I am going to now turn it over to Kathleen from the UCLA Blood and Platelet Center.
So yes, Kathy and I are here from the UCLA Blood and Platelet Center to tell you a little bit about who we are, where we are, and what we do. The Blood and Platelet Center, we're the largest hospital-based donation center in the United States, which means that everything we collect goes to our hospitals: Ronald Reagan, Mattel Children's Hospital, UCLA Santa Monica. We have two fixed site locations. One is in the Ackerman Student Union, and the other is in Gailey in Westwood Village. They're each about a half a mile from the Ronald Reagan Hospital. As you can see on this, we transfuse about 60,000 units a year, and we generally collect about 70% of that, of the blood products that we need. The importance of blood donation. Well, if any of you have known anyone that maybe has received a transfusion or has had cancer, maybe yourself, you know that there's a great need. About 25% of us will eventually need a transfusion ourselves. Blood cannot be manufactured. It has to be from human to human, but only about 3% of the eligible people donate. So that's why we need the UCLA community to come together and to help us collect the products that we need for our patients. To come to donate is, we think, pretty easy. We like to say it's a pretty easy way to save someone's life in 45 minutes. I mean, how many other options can you do that? So you come, you check in, you meet with a staff member, we review your history, you get some screening done, like your temperature, blood pressure, etc. The actual donation time is usually about 6 to 10 minutes. And then the most it can be is 15. And then after you're done, you rest for 15 minutes, you have some great snacks that we provide, make sure you're feeling well. Generally, if people eat well beforehand and hydrate well, they tend to not have a problem when they donate. So Kathy will talk about our incentives other than saving lives, right? What greater incentive is there? But however, we can sort of provide you with some other things as well. We have some standard promotions here, as you can see: movie tickets, gift cards, and some t-shirts. For platelet donations, platelets takes a lot longer. Platelets take about 1.5 to 2 hours to donate. We can explain that process to you when you come in to donate. One of the other incentives that we have that a lot of employees find appealing is what we call comp time, which is 4 hours of time that you can earn as paid time off. You're eligible to do 6 of those a year, because that's how often you can donate blood. So you can earn up to 3 days of paid time off. So that's generally a pretty popular perk. And one of the things that we do that's been really a great way for us to get the word out is our partnerships. And so we do a lot of presentations on campus with faculty, in classrooms, and we work with a lot of student clubs. We also work with departments, and that's been a great way for us to bring in a lot of first-time donors. People come together, there's this communal feel. So any way that y'all maybe can think of having us partner with you, we table at events, mentioned in newsletters. We also provide tours of our processing lab for departments. We tend to do those over the summer. When the students aren't around, we'd love to offer those tours to departments in the summer. We also have a Lifesaver program where you could work with us to sponsor a week that your department would host in our donor center. So that's a great area for us to work with y'all. And, you know, ultimately it's about patients, right? I mean, that's why we exist, is to help patients. And so as you can see here, we even have some current students. In that poster, there are 3 current students who all have received transfusions. And there's many, many stories, right? Every year we have an annual luncheon where a patient gets to meet their donors. It's an incredibly powerful experience when, you know, a patient, someone who, you know, who received blood transfusion gets to meet their donors. It's pretty amazing. So we hope that you all will please consider donating. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer those as well. There are some restrictions, as I see a question here, that you can check on our website. We have a self-screening guide that you can look at that can help answer some questions. And if not, we'd be happy to answer those for you individually as well.
All right, thanks so much for sharing this. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll have our closing keynote, Dr. David McIntosh, recognized leader in the work of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion at UCLA. See you here, 2:53.
Welcome back, everyone. For the conference's closing keynote, we are fortunate to be joined by David McIntosh, Vice Dean of Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at the David Geffen School of Medicine. He is an experienced professional with more than 15 years of experience leading diversity, equity, and inclusion. David joined UCLA in August of 2021 as the inaugural Vice Dean of Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Prior, Dave served at Wake Forest Baptist Health as the Vice President, Chief Inclusion and Diversity Officer for the health system. Dave also served in the inaugural Chief Diversity Officer roles at the University of Louisville School of Medicine and the Texas A&M University College of Medicine. He has worked as a consultant on diversity matters in healthcare and education, and serves on local and national boards and committees. Even though David is new to UCLA, he brings unmatched experience in his field. Please welcome David McIntosh.
Okay, hello friends. It is great to see y'all. I am so appreciative of the opportunity to be here. I've only worked here at UCLA for a little less than a year, and I've only lived in California, obviously, for a little less than a year as well. And so it's really a privilege and joy to be here with you all today. I'm going to start today by just sharing a little bit about myself, because I think when you hear the description of who I am and what I do, and then you see my face, sometimes people are wondering, they're like, well, I wonder what Dave is. And I get that question a lot, actually. People ask me just right to my face, like, well, what are you? And so I feel like it's really important to just share all of my identities up front. I am a straight, white, cisgendered male. And it gets worse because I fall into almost every majority category there is. I'm right-handed. I have brown hair, brown eyes, which is most common. I grew up Catholic, which is really common. I'm the average height and weight of an American male. Like I'm able-bodied. Like I fall into all these majority categories. And so people often ask, Dave, how did you get into this line of work? How did you get that job? That's not really a job that we see many people with your identity background with. And I joke that it started back, I grew up in Chicago, and I went to a small private liberal arts school in central Wisconsin on a tennis scholarship. I'll let that marinate for a moment, because it really doesn't get a whole lot more privileged than that kind of identity background, going to a small private liberal arts school in Wisconsin on a tennis scholarship. But it was when I was there, I had the opportunity to do an away study, and I studied at a place called Fisk University in Nashville. For those of you who don't know Fisk, it's a historically Black college, and it's a really famous one. It's where W.E.B. Du Bois studied. It's where the late, great Congressman John Lewis studied. It's where so many luminaries who've done this work for literally centuries have gone and been educated. When I was there, I was the only white student on that campus. And because of the nature of residential segregation, I was the only white student for miles around. Now, layering on top of that, most historically Black colleges have a disproportionate number of women to men. The ratio of women to men when I was at Fisk was 13-1. So that means there were 13 women on campus for every one male on campus. That gave me a powerful opportunity for me to examine my positionality and really examine what does it mean to be a white man in America. Now, I learned a ton of lessons. I studied with a professor who studied with Langston Hughes. I had just so many amazing seminal experiences. And when my time there was done, I was there for 6 months. When my time was over, the chaplain asked me to make a promise in front of the entire congregation, the whole student body. She said, Dave, we need you to do something with the information you have because people will listen to you because of who you are and what you represent. However, if you choose to do nothing, you are complicit with everything you learned about while you were here. And so I made my promises. I said, I will promise, I will do something. I will make good on this. This information will not die with me. And so I finished my degree. My bachelor's degree is actually in economics. And I started working at a bank because it's pretty much the job that's available to you with a degree in economics. And I realized pretty quickly I wasn't doing justice to what I said I was going to do. So I left my job. I went back and got my master's and my PhD, studying education, sociology, and critical pedagogies. I started working in diversity work about 15 years ago and started as a grad assistant, kind of worked my way up, and then I went over into academic medicine. And I've been a chief diversity officer at the stops that you've heard so far. And so what I want to share is that it does not matter what your identity or background is. There is room for all of us to contribute to this justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion mission. And in fact, I would argue more than that, it's incumbent upon us all to participate in this work. We cannot do this work as a siloed function. This cannot work if diversity is only for the people that are affected or only those who are marginalized or otherized in our society. It has to be all of us. And there is room for all of us at the table. I love this quote by the late, great Maya Angelou. I worked at Wake Forest, as you heard, and she is the patron saint of that school and that town. She was faculty there for many years, and everything in that town is named for her. And so I learned pretty quickly, you have to either begin or end a presentation with a quote by her. And I love this one. Do the best that you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better. I love this, number one, for the simplicity. I can remember that no matter where I am. But number two, I love it because it suggests we're all already doing our best. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I can't wait to stick it to this group. Or I hope there's not many people that wake up in the morning and say, I can't wait to stick it to this person or this group. So we're all already doing our best, but we all have room to grow and learn. None of us have arrived, myself included. We all have more to grow and learn. We all have better ways that we can interact and behave in this world. And so this presentation is designed explicitly so that we can have this conversation. I'm going to do two things. I have my PhD in sociology and education. I know that I need to have some elements of data in order for me to be believable. And so I come in with that background. And so you'll see some data today. So those of you who are moved by data, I got you. There's also a group of you that will believe me once I show you the data, but you won't remember what I shared with you because that data is hard to remember, if I'm being really honest. And I presented this hundreds of times, and it's hard for me to remember the data sometimes. So I'm going to share with you stories because stories are what's going to help you remember why this is important and remember the data, and will actually do a better job of motivating you to action than data will. Data is really nice and it's important, but it oftentimes fails to motivate and inspire us to action. So that's where we're going, and that's what we're going to do here today. Okay. This is a tried and true educational model, and in this, what we're describing here is how we actually learn. And so what we know from a whole bunch of research is that it's very difficult to learn new concepts when you're sitting in a comfort zone where you're very comfortable in the skin that you're in and what you're doing. it's much better to be pushed outside of your comfort zone so that you're thinking differently about this, about the issues of our society and world. Now, it's a delicate balance because if I push you too far, I might push you into the panic zone. And when you get to the panic zone, sometimes you dig in your heel and you can't hear me anymore because you're feeling like you're under attack. And so this is going to be a delicate balance. And if I'm being really honest, I doubt there's a situation where I get everybody exactly in that learning zone. I think some people will be so far advanced that they'll be in their comfort zone the whole time. I think some folks are so brand new to this work that they may get pushed to the panic zone immediately. And so what I want to say to you, no matter where you find yourself in the course of this presentation, is stick with me. Think about why you're feeling the way you are. And suppose everything I'm saying is true, what are the implications therein? And so if you kind of coach yourself down with it, well, why am I feeling this way? That will help you to better be able to think about everything that I'm sharing here today. Now, I promise you, I'm not going to throw a whole bunch of PhD words at y'all. I am going to throw this at you really, really quickly. Ontology is the study of what is, and epistemology is how we know what is real. And so sometimes people throw around these really big fancy words, and to be honest, it's a really, really useful concept. What is real and true in the world, and how do we know? That's ontology and epistemology. And so there's whole fields of science dedicated to this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to describe the lived experience and the realities of our world through a very, very specific argument that I'm going to construct for you today. Now, I love starting presentations by pointing to the work of Scott Page. He's an industrial organization economist at the University of Michigan. He's a distinguished professor and very, very famous. He's one of these big numbers guys. And so he's written a couple of books. You can see them there, 2007 and 2017. The first one is called The Difference, and the second one is called The Diversity Bonus. And in both of these books, he makes the case through data that diversity matters when we're making complex decisions or doing complex functions. And it matters for two reasons. The first reason it matters is that cognitive diversity allows us to get a big, bold vision of the problem and potential solutions. Cognitive diversity is things like where you went to school, who you studied with, what subjects you studied and really resonated with, how you see problems. I think you can all agree that a biologist and a sociologist can see the same problems in very different ways. And so it's all of that. It goes into how we think about what is real and how we know what is real is true. The second type of diversity that matters is identity diversity. And that's your race, your sexual orientation, your gender identity, your socioeconomic status, your faith structure, your ability level, all of those things matter. And when you're solving a complex problem or doing a complex function, both of those types of diversity matter greatly in enhancing your ability to solve the problem. In fact, what Scott Page found in his research is that if you take a group of high achievers, but that have pretty much the same identity and cognitive diversity, and you take a group of lower achievers, but have that tremendous amount of diversity in it, the group that is lower achievers outperforms the group of high achievers way more than you would suspect. And so that's why he called that book The Diversity Bonus, because there's a bonus to having diversity as part of the equation. So this is why this is important. I'm making the case for why are we talking about this? Why is this important? We live in a time in our society, and you work at a place where we are responsible for training the next generation. We are a flagship institution. We are internationally known. And so it's really important that when we think about the extant problems that each of us face on a daily basis, that we're thinking about it through this important lens that Scott Page has illuminated for us. Now, I'm going to talk about some data. This data comes from the 2010 census, and it shows us that the demographic trend. Now, the 2020 data from the 2020 census should be coming out soon, but I don't have it yet. So we still rely on the 2010. You can see that the white population is going to peak in 2024 and begin to decline. Our Hispanic and Latinx population is going to double. Our Black and African American population is going to rise by 20 million. Our Asian American and Pacific Islander population is going to double. The US will be a quote unquote minority majority nation by 2043. And I say quote unquote, and I put that in quotes because that's an oxymoron, right? You can't be majority and minority, but we needed a way to describe the minoritized experience. And so I really don't like that word minority. I'd rather talk about minoritized. And so, but our nation will be, we will have a new day in our nation. California is already there. We already have white folks are already not the majority here, and a handful of other states, Texas, New York, I believe Illinois is really close. I think Pennsylvania is really close. And so, so this is just reality. These are facts. This data comes from the Brookings Institute, and it shows us the year when white folks will no longer be the majority. And you can see for the group of people 18 and under, that year, that happened in 2020. And for the group 18 to 29, that year will be 2027. For the group in their 30s, 2033 will be the year white folks are no longer the majority. And you can see as it goes down. So you can see as the younger generation gets older, they're pretty much aging out. And you can see the kind of demographic shift in our country. And that kind of matches with the data I just shared with you from the census. This is really, really interesting. And you might just be thinking, okay, well, that's great. We're going to be a more diverse society. And so we're going to have all these great opportunities to take advantage of that diversity bonus you talked about a minute ago. And I would say, yes, and we need to be really, really careful here, because we live in a country where our schools are more segregated today than they were in the 1960s. And that data comes from our Civil Rights Project here at UCLA. So schools are more segregated today than they were in the 60s. Okay, well, what's the implications of that? Why does that matter? Well, this data comes from Texas, and it shows educational attainment for the students in Texas. And you might be thinking, Dave, why are you picking Texas? Is it just because you lived there for 10 years? And it's kind of because I lived there for a long time, but it's also because 1 in 10 students in public school systems in this nation go through the Texas public school systems. Texas is so heavy in public school education, in fact, that they have a disproportionate voice as to what information goes in our textbooks. There's a really powerful documentary called The Revisionaries that talks about how textbook information is decided upon, and how this group of gubernatorial appointed folks in Texas actually has a huge voice in what goes into textbooks in our country that get bought by California and New York and all the rest of these places. So let's look at Texas. In Texas, among those with less than high school education, 72% of the population is Hispanic and Latinx. And among those population with greater than a college level education, 68% of the population identifies as white. Now, I just told you 5 minutes ago what the demography of our country is. Recall, 2024, there's going to be a decline in white folks, and all the rest of our groups are growing pretty dramatically, with Hispanic and Latinx and Asian American Pacific Islander populations doubling in future years. What's the implications? Don't unmute, just kind of think to yourself, what are the implications of that? In case you didn't know, that actually is going to contribute to your ability to retire. Let me explain how. Our country is really, really good at creating very high-tech jobs, especially California, and jobs that require a lot of advanced training, a lot of experience, a lot of things like that. We don't produce nearly as many entry-level jobs, unskilled labor jobs. We don't have very many of those left in this country anymore. A lot of those have been shipped overseas because the world is flat now. That old book that talks about kind of leveling markets and how we can take advantage of all these economies of scale because of technology. And so a lot of the manufacturing jobs have left. So that means that if this holds true, we are going to have a huge population of folks that don't have access to the type of education that they need in order to have the jobs that we produce in the United States. Friends, we're headed toward a potential crisis, and this is really, really important for us to be aware of. So we really do. When I said that at the beginning, we all need to be engaged and invested and involved in this diversity work. That's not hyperbole. This is where we're headed as a nation. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, why is this the case? How is this happening? I don't even understand. How are the schools more segregated today than they were in the 60s? And what I would refer you to is a website called justicemap.org. They actually pull the data from the 2010 census that I shared with you at the very beginning, and they put it into a map form. And so what I'm showing you right now is a map of where we live. This is Los Angeles, California. And this is the racial demography of our community. In purple, you'll see that's where folks who identify as white are heavily concentrated in the purple areas. In the kind of that brick red color area, that's where folks who identify as Black and African American are concentrated. These areas that are blue are where Hispanic and Latinx folks are heavily concentrated. And then areas that are green are where Asian American and Pacific Islander populations are heavily concentrated. Now you can see, and the darker the color, the deeper the deeper the disparity is. And so for these areas up here, you can see Beverly Hills, really dark purple. That means it's a heavy concentration of white identified folks. And this area of East Los Angeles, where it's really dark blue, it's a heavy concentration of Hispanic and Latinx. But you can see also that there's some lighter areas, and that's where it's a little more diverse, where it's maybe just a little bit more of one group over another. This is really interesting. So this demonstrates the segregation that we see in our society. But it's not just that there's segregation, friends. It's that socioeconomic status is also tied to some of this work. So when I'm on this screen right here, I'm showing you the socioeconomic status of these different communities. And the darker blue the color is, the more wealthy the community is. And this darker brick red color is the less affluent a community is. Now, I'm going to flip back and forth so you can see it's not perfect. It is not, this does not suggest that if you're a person of color, you're automatically poor, or if that you're white, you're automatically wealthy. That is not the case at all. But it does show you that the neighborhoods that people live in have overlapped pretty closely with racial identity. And that's for a bunch of reasons, friends. When we think about somebody's ability to get an education, that's their opportunity to get ahead in life. Education is referred to as a means of social mobility, meaning the more education you have, oftentimes the better you can do in your life and in your world. But the less education you have access to, the worse you do. This is a really challenging subject to talk about, because if we don't have integrated schools and high quality school systems, we're not going to be able to remedy those two pie graphs that I showed you from Texas. We're not going to be able to remedy that without desegregating and having a dramatic difference in the way that we educate our young people. In case you were wondering, this is not just a Los Angeles problem. This is Chicago. This is where I grew up. And the same colors hold true. And look at the socioeconomic status of Chicago. It's almost on a street by street basis. Now, and just in case you think that maybe this is just a big city problem, this is Winston-Salem, North Carolina. This is where I lived most recently. This is where Wake Forest University is. And the same colors hold true here. And you can see a very similar disturbing trend. Friends, racial identity and socioeconomic status are inextricably intertwined because of the ways that our policies have been written, because of the way that redlining has happened, because of a number of ways that our society has functioned. And there are implications for that. Namely, we are socialized to believe certain messages about groups that we don't interact with. And since we don't interact with a lot of diversity often, we learn lessons from problematic sources. We learn lessons about bigotry and bias and stereotypes from people who love us, but who often have a flawed lens themselves. And so this cycle of socialization, I don't have time to go into actually do a whole 30-minute presentation on this, but this basically describes how we are born into this world without prejudice or stereotypes, but we're taught these things through the course of living in our society. And how does this matter? Why does this matter? Well, this matters because it manifests into bias, this horrible, pernicious thing that we've all had plenty of presentations on. I hesitate to even bring forward any of these studies because they each deserve their own day in the sun, but I will bring forward one. There's the hiring by race and hiring by gender. And in those studies, what happened is they had researchers that sent an identical resume to a cross-section of industries in Chicago and Boston. And they sent two resumes. One for the gender study, they sent one resume that had a woman's name, traditional woman sounding name, and a traditional man sounding name. Identical otherwise to a cross-section of industries. And for the race one, they sent traditionally Black sounding names like Malcolm or Jamal, and traditional white sounding names like Adam or Steve to, again, a cross-section of industries. You may not be surprised to learn that the traditional man sounding name and the traditional white sounding name got twice as many callbacks as the traditional woman sounding name or the traditional black sounding name. What's really breathtaking about this study is that for the race, they started adding years of experience to Malik and Jamal to understand the penalty for having a black sounding name in our society when you're applying for a job. The reality is that it's 8 years. They had to add 8 years of experience to Malik and Jamal before they had callback parity with Adam and Steve. That, friends, is a breathtaking bias. And what's interesting, and this is important for us all to note, what's interesting is the people reviewing those resumes were not just white folks. These were folks of color. These were Black and African-American folks. These were Hispanic and Latinx folks. These were Asian American folks. These were Indigenous folks. There are folks in HR across the racial spectrum who are falling victim to this exact same phenomenon. So when we live in these segregated communities and we begin to learn these socialized messages, they have really, really devastating consequences. And just in case you think you could outsmart this, you're like, I'm a really smart person, I can get past this. This study here shows that actually the more cognitively sophisticated you are, the worse your blind spot bias was. Well, how does this manifest, Dave? That bias stuff is really, really important and really interesting, but how does that manifest in my day-to-day? Let me share, friends. This comes through in microaggressions and microaffirmations. We should all at this point probably have heard of this idea of microaggressions. These are the mini slights that many folks who are underrepresented or traditionally marginalized experience on a daily basis. Think about death from 1,000 paper cuts. These are those little indignities that you experience through the course of your day. And that while that one does not have a devastating consequence, it's the cumulative effect of having those over days, weeks, months, and years that does have a cumulative effect that is devastating for underrepresented populations. And then I want you to think about microaffirmations. Think about the little nudges that we give to folks, the attaboy, the pat on the back, like that make you feel good. They fill your cup. They're the wind in your sail. When you get one of those, you feel really good about yourself. And it doesn't even have to be a big deal. It can be like, hey, thanks for your help on that project. We couldn't have done it without you. That makes you feel good and you do really great work. When you compare the consequence or the impact of those microaggressions versus microaffirmations, it can be the difference between doing a really great job and being happy and healthy there for 20 years or feeling like I'm going to be a failure and I hate my job and I want to go work somewhere else. Importantly, these microaggressions are perpetrated by people who believe that they're treating people perfectly equal. Daryl Wing-Soo did a lot of this research. And this is not just by race, friends. This graph came from BBC News, and I thought it was really, really nice. It's this idea of mansplaining, which if you don't know what that is, sometimes as a male identified person, we fall victim to sometimes trying to explain things to people that already know things. And we assume that we know more about things than perhaps other people. And so this phenomenon was born. And this was a really nice little graphic to say, ask yourself these questions to understand, are you mansplaining something or not? Do you need to be involved in this level of the conversation? What I want to challenge us all to do, and I said that this work is important for all of us, I want to challenge us all to be allies in this work. And being an ally does not mean just that, I care about diversity and so I don't have to do anything. Actually, it's quite the contrary. If you're going to be an ally for this work, it means that you actually have to roll up your sleeves and be engaged and involved in this work. You cannot be a passive vessel and truly embrace a definition for justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. It calls upon you to act. Also importantly is that you don't get to designate whether you're an ally. You can say you're committed to this work, but your peers and colleagues will tell you whether you're actually fulfilling that mission of being an ally. It's not up to you to decide. It's your actions that actually decide whether you're being a really good ally. And here's another gender identity example that I thought was really powerful. This data came from a study where they found that 70% of men feel that there should be more women in positions of political power, and 60% of men believe that there should be more women leaders in the workplace. 66% of men surveyed felt that women continue to face major barriers in their profession, and 88% of men affirm that they are doing everything they can to support their partner's career, and 77% of women agreed. And I read this and I said, good job, we're making progress. And then I went to the next part of the study and it was not so happy, friends. It found that only 41% of women agreed that men were doing, quote unquote, everything they can to support gender equity at work. 60% of men and women agree that it's rare to see a man speaking out against discrimination against women. 85% of men reported that their workplace treats women and men equally in terms of pay, promotion, and recruitment. Hardly a year goes by, friends, when we don't see something on NPR or some other news source that shows that there are still breathtaking disparities in terms of compensation, promotion, and recruitment for women versus men. And then this last one is really devastating. 77% of men reported that sexual harassment is not a problem in the workplace, while 40% of women surveyed said that they had been victims of harassment. We need to, as we think about our own positionality and the way that we see the world, we need to be intrinsically motivated to understand why what is. We need to really engage with our colleagues and our peers and with podcasts and with research to understand the true lived experience of those that we work alongside of, so that we can be good allies. Because if we don't know this information, we can't be a good ally because we don't know the truth of what's really going on in our workspace. So what should we do? I get this question a lot. Let me say that sometimes people say, well, I'm going to take those implicit bias tests and I'm going to really work on changing my bias. Let me just go ahead and spoil that, because changing your bias doesn't actually necessarily change behavior. And what we're after here is actual behavior change. Furthermore, sometimes when you are in one of these situations and you see something go wrong, you see something that was problematic, sometimes you want to jump in and say something, but there's something in the back of your mind that says, don't get involved with this. This isn't your issue. You don't know enough. You don't belong in this conversation. We doubt ourselves in all those ways, and it makes us stop from interrupting and doing that important work. That's called the bystander effect, and it came from this research from Darlene Latane. And so what I would share with you is that it's the course of constant practice of actually matching our behavior with what we see going on in the world, and trust that people will support you. If you're the first one to interrupt an incivility, I promise you there are other people that also see the incivility and also want to be part of the solution. It's at this point when people say, Dave, this is all fine and great, just tell me what to do. Obviously, you're an expert, just tell me what you want me to do. And the problem, friends, is that I can't tell you what to do, because only you know what you can do. Only you know where you have power and privilege and space, and know what it is you can and should be doing. I'm going to give you another quick example. We're getting very low on time, but let me give you an example. In my life, I did a lot of interviewing of white identified folks and folks of color in the course of my research. And after one of my interviews, I interviewed a white woman who does diversity work. And after the interview, I was just making small talk with her. And I said, hey, where do you live in this town? And she named a suburb that she lived in, a very affluent, very white suburb. And I said, well, how do you justify that, given that you do this diversity work day to day? And she said, oh, Dave, well, like when I'm at work from 8 to 5, I'm in there. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. But I just want my kids to go to the best schools. Sometimes on the weekends, I just want to wear my pearls. Friends, that is breathtaking. I just shared with you the data on segregation and the impact on school systems. But on top of that, she said, sometimes I just want to wear my pearls, which is Southern speak, because this was in the Deep South. That's Southern speak for sometimes I just want to be with people who look like me in a high class, highfalutin, like one of these really prestigious bougie places. And this is a person who does diversity work. So from that moment on, I learned a really valuable lesson, which is you have to be in the community. You can't just do this work and expect to be part of a community, or just do this work from 8 to 5 and then expect to actually be an ally. So in my day-to-day, I live in a mixed race, mixed income community, which is part of my commitment everywhere I go. That ensures that my children go to a mixed race, mixed income school. That ensures that we have mixed race, mixed income experiences, and our tax dollars are going to underrepresented businesses. And so when I was at Wake Forest, I had a person say, Dave, my kids go to this really, really diverse school. In fact, my one child was the only white child in his classroom, and the other child had one other white child. And so somebody said, Dave, do your kids agree with this little sociology experiment you're doing on them? And I said 2 things. Number one, my kids don't know any different. Number two, I can have really powerful conversations with my kids as a function of doing this. So we're a big baseball family. I grew up in Chicago. We're a big Cubs family. Amazing experience. I know I'm in Dodgers territory, but love baseball. And we were sitting in the little minor league ballpark there, and my kids were taking in this baseball environment. The organs playing. We got our hot dogs, and I'm looking at my kids, and they're taking it in, right? They're looking all around, and I'm like, yeah, I'm giving my kids the gift of baseball, and one day they're going to give their kids the gift of baseball, and it's going to be a Macintosh tradition. And I'm beaming with pride. I'm like, yeah. And my boy turned to me and he said, "Daddy, is this stadium segregated?" I said, "No, buddy, why would you think that?" And he said, "Well, the only brown people I see are on the field, and the only I only see peach colored people sitting in the seats." Friends, that is a brilliant example of cognitive dissonance only able to be created through lived experience. And my child was 7. My child had internalized what a segregated environment meant. And when he looked around the stadium, he didn't see people who looked like his friends. He didn't see people who looked like the people that he was around the most. And so he recognized it as segregation and asked a brilliant question. But now I'm able to have a conversation with this 7-year-old about the difference between state-sanctioned segregation and de facto segregation, which is what we have in our society, de facto segregation. So I had that conversation with my 7-year-old son. If I'm being really honest, it would have really helped me to take my boy to work with me on Monday morning, because we could have had that brilliant conversation with all of the educational and hospital administration leadership at the institution. Friends, I want to close by saying that in order to build trust with community, it's important to admit that we don't know everything. It's important to be authentic about and honest about the spaces where you do have power and what you can do. It's important for you to be intentional and conscious about what's going on around you. And finally, it's important to be empathic in your approach, which is demonstrating empathy for those who are underserved and those that are in our community. I want to thank you all so much for the time today. I really, really appreciate it. I apologize I gobbled up our question and answer time, but if people do have questions, if there is time, I'm happy to stick around for another couple minutes.
Thank you, Dave. That was a very powerful presentation and a necessary one as well. We did have a question, and that is, what is the biggest challenge that you've seen at the university level when it comes to leadership and diversity?
Good. If I'm being really honest, I think people want to do the right thing. There's a lack of knowledge about what to actually do. And there's so little time, especially like in our very busy lives, to kind of remediate the education that we didn't get. So we're talking about the world's foremost expert on every subject that you can imagine here at UCLA. And now I'm going to ask them to basically go back to kindergarten on this one particular issue. And to be honest, they're writing grants and they're writing papers and books. And a lot of times there's not that level of engagement. I think there's oftentimes the belief, well, I'm not actively hurting anybody, so I must be on the right side of this. But when you're not, if that's your threshold, then we're never going to get to where we need to go.
Right. Okay. And here's another question from Laura. What resources would you recommend for white identifying folks to learn more about the inequities we've been too privileged to see, and what actions we can take to be allies?
I love it. Thank you. Whoever asked that, thank you. That's a brilliant question. There are a ton of resources right now. And so I would maybe even start with some of the podcasts that you can find. There are so many great, there's so many great experiences and opportunities there to start with. There's a lot of great books that are being written. There's a book called Waking Up White. There is a book, Ibram Kendi talks about being an anti-racist. There's a lot of really good resources in that realm. On top of that, I would say that there is some training programs that you can be a part of. There's 2 in particular that I really highly endorse. The first one is called the Racial Equity Institute. They're in Greensboro, North Carolina, and they do on-site trainings. They're amazing. They're called REI, Racial Equity Institute. The other one that's the granddaddy of all anti-racism training is called the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. They're from New Orleans, and they've been doing anti-racism organizing and training since the 1960s, and they have a well-documented tradition of research around their work. Both of those institutes will give you a powerful deep dive. It's like a 3-day training, but it'll give you more information than you could get in a year of doing reading and podcasts and all that stuff. You go to one of these 3-day institutes and you will have the data, the arguments, the understanding and information. It just takes that intrinsic motivation and you finding the time. The last thing I'll say, and I don't know 100% about this group, I just found it the other day. And so I'm going to go to a training on Sunday on this. There's a group called SURGE. SURGE stands for Standing Up for Racial Equity, or no, Standing Up for Racial Justice. I was part of the SURGE chapter at Louisville, and I found that LA has a SURGE chapter. And so I'm looking into that as well, but that's a group that organizes around white folks who want to learn more about standing up for racial justice. And so I don't know, I can't endorse that group, but it's at least worth investigating. Like I said, I'm going to go to their training this Sunday. If you go to their website, there's a thing on LA, and I think it's at least a reputable umbrella organization.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to all the questions, but we thank you for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you all so much.
Thank you again, Dave, for sharing your story with us. Well, folks, we have reached the conclusion of our webinar portion of the AMG conference, but we're not done yet. In just a few minutes, we're going to open up a special Zoom meeting for our virtual networking session. You'll be able to turn on your video, unmute yourself, and connect with some colleagues, maybe even make some new friends. Please remember to complete our survey to be entered into one of the many $25 gift cards and to win a grand prize of a free UCLA extension course. The winner will be announced in a few days. We'll drop a link in the chat as well as email it to you. So please make sure you complete your survey.
And so for those of you who will be signing off at this point, we want to thank you for joining us at the 5th Annual AMG Leadership Conference. We hope that you've enjoyed the program. It would not have been possible without the support, though, of our campus sponsors and the dedication of our conference planning committee. They're all here, and they'd be waving if we could see them, but here's a photo of them. Take a look. And for the past year, just so you know, we as a team, we've met regularly to bring you this conference. It's been a great experience, and we look forward to hosting an in-person one, perhaps in May of 2023. And more events like this. This is something that we do as volunteers, and we are blessed and thankful to be able to provide it to you.